Next, we will continue on with my favorite thing to do at these Zoom meetings, the roll. Steve.
Here.
Marianne.
Here.
Carl.
Present.
Bill.
Present.
Are there any other planning board members that I can't see or I can't see at this moment?
There are none. Bonnie asked for the night off.
Okay. Speaking of nights off, I will not be in attendance at the meeting on September 17th. And Phil, we talked about this earlier, but you're good to step up as vice chair to run the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right. Let's review the minutes from the August 20th, I think, meeting. Any comments, edits, suggestions, motions about the minutes from our last meeting? Anybody? I think, Steve, you were not there, but everyone else was there. So no edits to the minutes?
No.
Someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the minutes from August 20th? All right. I will now read the roll. Steve. Oh, you weren't there. Marianne.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Bill.
Aye.
And me, Rebecca. Aye. All right, minutes are approved. All right, the only other thing, unless we have other business, is looking at the zoning changes. The zoning subcommittee met earlier today, drew out, looked at some of the sort of where the boundary lines were going to be for the proposed zoning changes. So I think maybe the best thing to do might be to just take a peek at that. Does that work for everyone?
Sure.
Okay. Well, let me just make sure I don't have anything weird popped up here. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so I'm going to just take away the proposed changes just so you can see the these are the existing zones that we have now. I'm going to zoom in a little further so we can get a little closer. Basically, we decided to take a for the Gateway District and the Tenny Mountain Highway. We did a 500-foot estimated. The goal would be 500 feet. The map is not going to be exactly 500 because I did this in about 10 minutes. But we drew a 500-foot strip for the Gateway District here. Ended it at the entrance to Tenny Mountain Highway. We continued, you can see, I'm running to point at my screen, but you're not going to be able to see that. The existing Tenny or the highway commercial, it follows, let me turn this off for a second. You can see it kind of drops down here and follows this line. We just brought it up to a full 500 feet to, I think that's close on the other side of the Hannaford parking lot. So here's the Hannaford parking lot.
And just, that's the ICD right now.
That's the ICD, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
sorry. Yeah, thank you.
it'll include the existing development and the existing proposed development along that stretch that's in the ag zone now.
And it'll take away the waves between ag and ICD along there too. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And we said 500 feet. Again, the line I drew is you probably wouldn't be able to measure an equal 500 feet, but that's the goal. And when we ultimately get this redrawn, if this is approved, it's sort of the written record of the zoning map is the important one, I think. So if I'm not making everyone super dizzy by zooming around, I'm going to zoom out and then move over to see if you can see most of this. I'm going to take away the proposed zoning. You can see this is the existing highway commercial zone here. And here, this is agriculture. I'm gonna turn this on again. We just changed this whole highway commercial to gateway. That just seemed to make sense for that strange strip there. And then again, we did that 500-foot strip. Obviously, I was not even on this either, but 500 foot from Route 3 going south to the Bridgewater town line. Obviously, we left alone the little appendix that fits into Holderness. Yeah, so questions, comments, anything from the zoning subcommittee? Yes, Steve,
Can I just make a clarification?
please.
Because I know Frank's there. And so because we're only addressing 3 of the districts currently, we're not addressing village commercial. At one point, Frank had brought to our attention that there's that section which we show as the northern part of the Route 3 South Gateway. Yeah, like right by the skate park and Railroad Square. That is there's a section there that's ag now.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Gateway for now, but probably would eventually belong within Village Commercial when we get the time to turn our attention to that district.
Yep. And similarly to a discussion that I started last meeting at Penny Mountain, that we're worried about any development that's in the works at Penny Mountain Highway, the Tenny Mountain, the ski area, the development there. The Z zoning changes really, mostly for us, need to be phased in. And so the next thing to look at would be stuff at Tenny Mountain, the development that seems to be more closely related to the village commercial. So there's some things that are in the works. We can't address everything at once. We've got to do this in a phased way.
Madam Chair, in the not too distant future, Tenny's going to be coming for conceptual. Mostly residential stuff and a small village of retail, but they're talking about a long-term plan.
Okay.
I mean, the residential stuff would be easy under the open space district or rural residential or whatever it gets called. And like getting the density and the mix of residential could be easy because they have open space to set aside.
Does anybody recall, or probably not, as far as open space developments at Tenny, they talk about, subtracting steep slopes from the mix and things of that nature. Considering, would we accept the mountain itself as being part of the open space mix because it's already been developed?
You mean the ski area?
Yeah, and some of the backlands up there.
I mean, if it's not developable, I think it may be challenging, but if it's just because it's recreation already, I think recreation's okay. There are a lot of open space developments that have a golf course or some other recreation use.
Because they also talked about recreation trails on the mountain and possibly getting to the conservation easement through the Tenny Mountain, one that's up on the hillside there.
That's not a conservation easement. I thought that was just a piece of owned land by the town.
Right, but it's held by the Conservation Commission.
Okay, I thought it was just owned by the town and the Conservation Commission is maybe managing it, but it's owned by the town, but not protected in any way, is what I understood.
Okay, I'll look into that.
Yeah, I'm not sure the Conservation Commission has authority to make decisions about that without the town, but.
Right.
So I do have a question that didn't occur to me this afternoon when we were discussing these layouts. There's a big stretch of Route 25 in between the Tenny Mountain mixed use area and the Gateway District. And I'm thinking that the area, right through there, unless there's prohibitive language from the state about, limited access there, is it worth putting mixed or gateway zoning along there in case someone chooses down the road to look at a project there and they get approval from the state for access?
Brian, isn't that limited access, that whole stretch?
Very definitely is. Other than the southern side, which can be accessed from the town side.
Right.
And then on the north, it can only come through off of Fairgrounds Road.
But the state could change that at any time, could they not? If someone purchased land and proposed a development, they could grant access if they chose to.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, all it
Yeah.
would take is an application to the state. So in my mind, I think it's worth considering that area. We could also add Gateway District, probably not on the south side, but at least on the north side of 25 through there.
So Phil, I have a couple thoughts on this, and my initial reaction is I disagree with you, and I'm so excited to have something to disagree about. But so a couple things. One is I think that process of switching when it's limited access is a little bit harder. DOT really doesn't want some of these stretches opened up. It may be possible, like you're saying, or like Brian said, you could come in from some of the other routes.
Mhm.
But I think that stretch being largely floodplain, I don't think it has water and sewer on
No,
the
it doesn't.
along 25. I mean, you know that the sewer line runs below the Baker River, but
Good
is that
point.
correct?
And it's also quite elevated, the highway at that point,
It is.
which would make it problematic for a developer to put in there, especially if they're close to that 500-foot line of the environmentally sensitive zone.
Right. Okay.
The other thing I would just throw in, and then I promise I'll shut up, is I think I would hate to overzone sections, especially now that there's a lot of roadway that's going to change its zoning designation. And what I'm saying, I guess, is if there's going to be activity in this Tenny Mountain Highway mixed use zone, I'd like to kind of send that there or send it to Village Commercial instead of just spreading it out in a very sprawly way.
No, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I agree with that, Steve. It seems like if we were to all of a sudden have some sort of project there, we'd be encouraging more sprawl towards that end of Tenny Mountain Highway. And if we want to increase the density of development where it already exists, leaving that as the open space, rural, residential, whatever we're going to end up calling it, would be maybe the best thing for that right now.
I'm not going to take your disagreement with me as an offense. I brought it up as a point of discussion to
No, I
just
think that's it. I
make sure
think
that
it's
we're
good.
all on the same page and that we think through it.
a duel.
In the same way, when we talked about this afternoon, I'm going to go a little west here where these were supposed to be touching. That's not a random two pieces of open space, rural, residential in between. But cutting the Tenny Mountain zone where the current ICD is, and I think it follows the Millbrook right there, which is why you can see how squirrely it is there. Cutting it off there in the same place it is, and then continuing this piece here to having that be the gateway. In the same way, the increasing or encouraging more density in this area as opposed to in the gateway. So.
But uses along that stretch, if they met the density requirements, wouldn't change fundamentally from the ICD, would they, in that area, Madam Chair?
I'm trying to remember from those sheets. Steve, do you have an answer to that?
Hold on, I have it pulled up. I'm just going to check to see if to react to what Brian's saying. So, so residential, lodging, professional service and office, eating and drinking establishments, retail, personal services. You're right, Brian. All those could go in either Tenny Mountain Highway mixed use or gateway. Industrial is only by conditional use permit.
Right.
Then you're right. It's really just the acreage count, the minimum lot size, which for a lot of those, they probably have more than an acre anyway.
Yes, in that area, they are quite large. Thank you.
Other questions? I think we've had some discussion from folks that we've already talked about this at our meeting earlier today. So Marianne, Carl, any other comments, questions? What do you think about this?
So why the 500 feet designation? What is,
Okay, so I looked at, let's see, so this is a measuring tool I'm going to put on. We basically looked at this area here, and
Okay.
this seemed a little, the way this kind of, this line seemed a little off to us. So we actually just measured this distance here, and I think at its biggest point, it was about 500 feet.
I'd say,
So it just seemed like that encompassed what was already there, and then we just chose to make it about the same. So,
okay.
and
makes
that
sense.
seems like a reasonable distance. So,
Another option would be hard to map. Well, at least for tonight's purposes, it would have been hard to map. But I was listening to Phil and Brian talk before the meeting, and another option would be to say parcels fronting on Route 3A, Route 3, would be within the district, but it would give you a much more irregular district. I don't have a preference either way. I don't know if others do.
Yeah, we were talking about backlot usage. If a property was, 1,000 feet deep, perhaps you could have, something different behind it once you got under 500-foot zone.
other thoughts on that, the 500 foot, or should we do this parcel by parcel?
Do you want me to read what we have in our zoning ordinance on lots in two zones for those parcels that are going to be split by the boundary line?
I think that's a great idea.
All right, so section 406, lots in two zones. A, where a zone boundary line divides a lot of record at the time that such line is adopted, the lot shall conform to the regulations for the more restricted zone, providing the lot has frontage on a street in the more restricted zone. Where a zone boundary line divides a lot line, so this is B, where a zone boundary line divides a lot at the time such a line is adopted, the regulations for the less restricted part of the lot shall not extend more than 30 feet, 100 feet in rural districts, into the more restricted part, providing the lot has frontage on a street in the less restricted zone. So
We have to rewrite, put in a third one for that.
maybe, yeah. But if what we're looking at is a 1 acre minimum lot size, or well, yeah, I guess we do need to look at that. The more restricted would be 1 acre minimum lot size, not 5.
I'd like to have us think about what the landowners that would be involved in this name change,
More would be 5.
what value, what is the value added by this new gateway system? What is the difference of either the elements of within our zoning regulations for compliance, or how more difficult or easier it is in the application for the use of the space that's located in this new district? And how is the citizens going to understand the value of this new gateway district to them? People will be concerned about losing their rights or value of doing stuff within their existing zone. And if this gateway district is supposed to facilitate the process of doing business for businesses, how does the landowners in those new zones, how does it affect their proposed or their thoughts of their values? This is one of the problems we've had in the previous, when we've tried to change the name of agricultural zone. And this gateway system looks like it's reality of what we're trying to do for businesses along state highways, which are considered commercial access roads. But again, it's the perception of changes of values that the landowners currently in the agricultural zone would view it as a loss of some expected use of their land. I don't know if you've thought about that or not.
It appears that all of, just reading it, I think the uses are, the number of uses are increased. If it's going from currently agricultural to gateway, it looks like there are more specific uses that are granted
Okay.
as allowed.
Can I clarify this for you, Frank?
Yes.
So, Frank, I think you're actually the originator of the gateway concept at one of our work sessions probably a year ago. We were talking about if we change the agricultural zone to rural residential or open space, and we reduced a bunch of the existing uses, because basically agriculture allows everything now. It seemed like it would be a hardship for some of the properties you're talking about that front on these state highways. And so we started talking about, and I think you helped us refine the idea of the gateway. There is a change in lot size. So right now it's an acre, it'll go to 2 acres. That's just so that it's not so dense with so many driveway cuts along these routes that they really see a huge change in character.
Right. Okay.
Aside from that, it's largely, like Phil said, pretty close to the existing uses that are allowed.
Okay.
Thanks for your clarification, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think what Frank's getting at too is part of what I hope we'll talk about tonight. Like, how do we tell the story in a way that answers those questions for people? And how do we answer questions people have?
Yeah, and I think that's, if we as a board are agreeable to the boundaries here and to the zone, the descriptions, the purpose statements that we have for each of these zones, if we're good to move forward as a board, then we need to talk about how we're going to, I mean, this is, actually probably the easy part is to decide what we'd like to see happen, and then trying to implement this at the town level is the next challenge. So that's going to involve a pretty concerted and deliberate communication effort. So we need to decide that this is what we want. If there's, I feel like we need to, I would probably like to see a vote that this is what we'd like to see as a board. And then think about how we're going to make this happen, how we're going to get the rest of our fellow citizens on board with this as well. So.
And I would say, just keep in mind, it can still change. Like, this is just a draft. So if we can engage people, they can help us fine tune it.
Right.
I think one of the questions that we had discussed earlier is, and as Marianne brought up earlier, how did we come with 500 feet? And, Rebecca did point out that the existing area to the north of Tenny Mountain Highway is approximately 500 feet, and it looks good. We could define, the distance for the Gateway District. We could be more limited and say 300 feet if we wanted to. This is also, I'm just throwing that out there for discussion so the board feels comfortable that we have some options here. We don't have to go with 500. If somebody feels strongly about going with a lesser or greater number, we should discuss it.
And I guess I think this one's looking a little big, so, this one.
Wide
It's
is
pretty close.
down
Yeah.
to the border.
So, yeah, that's about 500 feet there too. So, yeah, and I think bringing this to, public hearing, public input is good too, because there's a lot of things that, the zoning committee, subcommittee hasn't thought about, that the board hasn't thought about. So, yeah. It's interesting looking at this map. There's all these businesses in town that I've never heard of. So, all right. So do we want to just agree as a group that we're good to move forward, or are we not into what we're seeing here?
I think it's going to be
Carl.
a step in the direction, and it's a starting point, and there's obviously going to be input from other parties that can be taken into consideration, but at least it's a point to start from.
Great.
I would just say, as a, I guess, citizen of the town and not on the board, I think this makes a lot of sense to me. I think the areas that you kind of have designated as commercial areas make sense. I think most people would like to keep it to downtown, to up through Tenny Mountain Highway and up towards the mountain. That's my opinion. I am curious, though, it seems like there was at least some initial discussion about kind of that big swath in the middle of the town that is all agricultural zoning. At least that's my understanding of it. Was there never, or maybe it didn't get far enough because there was too much pushback about kind of expanding the purple section of town, the residential zoning parts of town? There seems like there's, in that swath, there's some residential neighborhoods that are zoned agricultural. And I just wonder if that was ever discussed.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So this is the single family residential, and the bluish color is the agricultural. Part of the sort of the three zones we're looking at is the Gateway, the Tenny Mountain, and then what is everything left over that's currently in the agricultural zone that we were looking at as the open space residential. So to cover that area as well.
So Mark, it would be a little bit less, it would be less density than the single family residential.
Yeah.
Less proximity to services like water, sewer,
Yep.
roads.
And certainly no present or considered agricultural uses would be prohibited in that area.
I had the same question. I was thinking in our list of tables, we don't list forestry or agricultural as specifically allowed, but
Got to be there.
I know, I think we probably should.
Yeah, we can. I don't think we'd want to prohibit them in any of the districts.
No,
No, I agree.
but that should be the lead as far as getting the public into it.
It's in the description.
But I mean, a lot of the pushback when they were talking about overlay zones of single familyness in the agricultural developed neighborhoods, Morse Road, for example, because it was not clear what an overlay zone would mean, there was tremendous pushback from the agricultural folks in town. So, again, it's just about getting the message across, which you all seem to embrace.
Yeah,
it's good.
Clarity is important.
Right.
It seems that so far, the table of district uses focuses on things that are permitted in some zones and permitted and maybe not permitted or via conditional use permit in other zones, but there are other uses that may be allowed everywhere that, if people have concerns about those, it may be better to just list them and say permitted in every zone.
I think one thing the public will definitely need is a lot of visual aids of the value of the new gateway zone system as to what's versus highway commercial or whatever is already there. Obviously, a lot of people going through the zoning ordinance can get confused or they just don't get into them. And we need to have this out in a manner which people can look at the value of this gateway zoning versus highway commercial or whatever is out there, so that they can give public input or at least understand the concept of it. So that's one thing from past events that we've tried, people not understanding what the intent and purpose of the planning board's action to update the zoning system has led to a lot of no's when it comes time for the votes.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Rebecca? I think we lost your sound.
Okay.
All right. So Frank, I totally agree with you. And I'm wondering, at one point, we've kind of consolidated these 3 districts into this one Word document right now. But if we get a vote tonight to proceed with this, as we do communicate with the public, do you think a side-by-side comparison that would say, like, if you're in highway commercial now and you're going to be in Gateway, this is what they look like?
Yes,
the
definitely.
changes?
That's the comparison they're going to look at to see what this program is going to enhance
Right.
their ability to do what, yes.
And to be transparent, if there is a change, if we're changing density or anything, that they know and how it relates back to the master plan. So at least we can.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's a great idea.
I'm sure the idea of lots of record before the change will weigh heavily on this too, Steve, correct?
Yep.
And in that light, and given what Phil read to us, perhaps there should be a 3rd paragraph talking to that with the new zones. I don't know. It's just kind of popped into my head.
Maybe explain grandfathered uses to people once again, too.
God.
Again? Still?
We're not coming to change what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Right.
I mean, we essentially have to calm them down that, and even what you had thought you might do in 10 years is, probably still legal.
No, can't hear you, Rebecca. I can read your lips.
What's going on?
Oh. Rebecca, you might have to type into the comment box.
And can you hear us? Okay.
All right.
Can you
Interesting.
go out, leave, and then come back in? Sometimes it solves.
As an alternate, is there a full member that's willing to make a motion on this when Rebecca's ready?
I don't want to, I was considering that, I don't want to stifle conversation, but we can certainly continue to consider this once we have a motion in a second, but I don't want that to stop discussion, which sometimes happens. But I will move that we proceed, that we approve the draft as shown on Rebecca's computer and the district uses as shown in the Word document, moving forward to present these to the town as a zoning amendment for 2021.
I'll second that.
Now we can have more discussion.
No audio.
Do you want me to take over? All right. I'll call the roll. Mary Ann?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Rebecca? Thumbs up if yes. All right. Phil, aye. And that's all we have for board tonight. Okay.
I'm sure.
Oh, Carl. Sorry. Carl.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I apologize. I'll try not to forget you in 2 weeks. All right. So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded and approved. We can have further discussion at this point. Does anybody have concerns or anything they'd like to add or address before we close the hearing on our board hearing on this?
No, I'm just looking to talk about that kind of the public outreach piece we've started to talk about after this portion's settled.
Yeah, I'd like to understand the process, but yeah, let's get through this.
So I may be rusty, but as my recollection of the process is that this is going to go to the town for it to be a zoning amendment. We can have a series of public hearings on it, which in my opinion, we should probably do our best to get. I don't know if we want to do a trifold to hand out as a handout for the public, or if we should just put it on the website. But I suspect maybe Rebecca will have an idea on that. But my thinking is we should get as much information to the public as possible in advance of the public hearing, and then anticipate a hearing where we get feedback. And if we need to amend the proposal, we will have time to do that up until, I forget when.
Yeah.
Early January, maybe? Something like that? Or is it November?
Yeah, I think it's in November.
November? Okay, all right.
Which kind of.
That's why I was,
squeezes
forgive me if I'm rusty.
the, ability to, just call, outreach meetings,
Yes.
in lieu of like not a work session, but a business session if there isn't any agenda items. But, that the timeline's tight. I think it can be done.
Yeah.
And certainly,
If we post the intent in November, December, according to the calendar that just came out, can't we make some small changes until like the end of January?
yeah, I mean, there's a final draft kind of language in that calendar. I forget how long it actually is. The period is maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, because they have to allow for, public hearings. But then there's also the public hearings after the thing is closed, where you actually determine, the shape of the new amendment, subject to, public comments. So, there'll be a couple of bites at the apple.
Right.
I think that when these go to be presented, we should do a huge ad campaign saying, the board is proposing some changes. Please tune in to the next meeting and hear, what they have to say, because the essence of them will be proffered at the March meeting. And that, also saying that, you'll have another chance to speak to it, in a more formal setting at the regulated public hearings.
So
Rebecca?
how do you decide, or so we're not going to be all the changes aren't going to happen at once. So how do you decide where to start first? Is there a best way to kind of one follows after the other?
We're proposing these 3 district changes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
We started with every district. We evaluated every district. We were going to change them all. And then we said, we're not getting anywhere. It's overwhelming.
Gotcha.
If we're not communicating clearly to each other, we can't communicate clearly to everybody else. So
Right.
focused on what we thought were the highest priority districts that were kind of linked to each other based on the master plan.
Gotcha.
Rebecca, can you hear now?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been able to hear this whole time. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
now we
great.
can.
All right.
I'm on my phone now, so. Yeah, I don't know. My mic cuts out on this computer sometimes, so sorry about that. It wasn't a deliberate attempt to get out of this meeting. So I'm not sure if you guys were talking about this while I was gone, but I think however we present anything to the rest of the town, everything needs to get grounded in the master plan, because that's where we're not doing this just on our own whim. This is all grounded in a huge amount of outreach work. So everybody's already had a crack at looking at this information. They've provided input. So we're standing on a foundation of input from others already. So this is our best interpretation of the master plan. So I think everything needs to start from there.
I like that.
Yeah. Steve, I think what you just said about the value of why we're focusing on this new gateway zone is one of those outreach rationales that we need to connect with the citizens, that we're focusing on these particular zones. And that's the benefit of the work involved would benefit the citizens of the town of Plymouth very quickly,
Right.
So, I think what you were just saying is one of those things we need to put in writing and a part of our intent and purpose. And I think the citizens would connect with it.
I agree with you, Frank. So I jotted down the things I heard already just tonight were some kind of handouts, like maybe it's the side-by-side comparison as well as the description of the zoning initiative. But something that could be online or be printed out and handed out.
Right, yeah.
Public hearings. And I heard some of the kind of background explanations of some of these terms like grandfathering, super simple, but to put people at ease that we're not coming to change their scenario. The fourth thing I would like to add, which we've talked about before and is time sensitive, but we have PB Cam people listening, would be this idea of a couple of short videos maybe, or maybe it's just one short video. But back to what you, Frank and Brian did years ago, that just was a conversation, explained the initiative linked to the master plan, like Rebecca's saying. But I don't know if that's something we can pull off in the next couple of weeks, if people want to.
When can you make it into the studio, Steve?
I'm happy to be one of the people. I could be there next week.
Can you sing Let's Know the Zones?
All right, never mind. I'm no longer available. And maybe Rebecca or Phil should actually be the person to do it, or maybe there are two of us that do it. I don't care who does it, but I think if we could get a couple of short videos out, or a short video out through social media, through the website, people will come with a little bit more information to the public hearing and maybe not so many pitchforks.
Yep. I think coupling that with a press release that goes at least in the Record Enterprise, maybe in the Laconia Daily Sun. I feel like those are pretty easy in a way to capture those folks that might be not seeing the stuff online. So, yeah.
Letter to the editor from our planning board chair.
Yep. Might be a nice break from some of the letters to the editor. I've only been looking at the Laconia Daily Sun, but might be a nice break from some of the stuff that's popping up there these days. So, yeah. And I'm happy to do any video stuff as well. So,
So Rebecca, getting back to the discussion we had earlier, since the board supports moving forward, I'm not sure who it seems like we should work on the zoning map and getting those more clearly defined. Does that make sense to you? Not that your maps aren't great, but I'm wondering if we need something that is more accurate to present to voters in terms of where, because people will infer from existing or from proposed lines, how it affects them, and I think it should be as accurate as possible, and that should probably be part of the documents moving forward. I just don't know where to go with that.
It might be easy.
Yeah.
GIS that we have for the tax maps.
Okay.
Because it does, you can range of butters out to a mile probably. So if we put a 500 foot, it would actually show up as to what properties, and it doesn't encompass the entire property, but just where it fits. So if you
That
have
might
a
work.
long one hanging out,
Okay.
that would, I think I'll play with that tomorrow and see if we
Okay.
can do it. Yeah.
yeah, I can do a little bit more of a detailed map, but I don't have the time to fine tune that to the degree that we'd need to. So.
Oh yeah, I wasn't trying to put it on you. I was trying to.
No. I know I'm the one with the mapping skills, but just
trying to
not the
think about-
mapping time.
It's more of a
So-
question. I'm not sure who this goes
Yeah.
to next, at least.
Right.
Yeah, I
I can
can
pull it up
take a
tomorrow.
crack
It'll be
on
super
it.
simple.
Yeah, Brian and
Okay.
I can work on it because
If it doesn't work, then
Thank you both.
no,
Can we ask Lakes Region? I mean, as a dues paying member, can we ask them if they could just take what we have and make a simple, it doesn't have to be a dynamic GIS map.
About
Try.
PSUs, that's, no.
I mean, unless Steve's
That's what I've
students
been
want to
getting.
do it, but it's probably not gonna have time. I don't think it's timely.
Yeah.
That's my concern. I am happy to have a class that I'm working with right now that I think could do the side-by-side comparisons of existing zones and proposed. Because it would be beneficial for them to understand what's happening and get us at what Frank was talking about. So we have some materials. So I'm happy to get on that right away.
Steve, could you take a look at the tables of uses in the ZO and, with the delineated uses there and put them in terms of these new zones?
I think,
because you hit most of them here, but it goes a little bit deeper in some other places. And I was just wondering if, it might be handy to show what we don't want there versus, because this is kind of like the ag zone, but, with a little bit more, it's aerial intent, but, it's going to affect uses too. So and I think that's what people are going to be concerned about.
right. And that's what we done with the kind of the initial drafts for these districts. And I think, so I can do that. I think I can do what you're asking for. And then if this gets approved, kind of back to Mary Ann's question, those existing table of uses we drop the zones that we just approved, and we'd have to add a new table. And then when we get to the other districts, that old table of uses would finally go away. It'd be kind of slowly to clean up the zoning ordinance, very user friendly.
All right, so what are our next, and please, if I'm missing something from when I had to step off for a second, what are our next steps? It sounds like in the next couple weeks, we'll have a letter to the editor and perhaps a press release. We need to get some flyers, and we need to figure out which work sessions or when we'll be running public hearings and informational meetings about this. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's October and November. I mean,
okay.
We don't seem to have much choice because we're up against it now, like Brian said.
Okay. All right. Steve, will you have time to review a letter to the editor tomorrow afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, and then I will follow up with a press release next week.
And then the video.
Yeah, I have basically next week, and that's it. I'm away the week of the 14th. So and then we'll want to have some sort of, I think, presentation ready to go for the October work session.
Okay.
Do we want to present at Bill's suggestion? Do we want to present this to the select board at one of their meetings?
It's just a thought.
Potentially.
I just was wondering if you wanted, I could schedule it, but if not, that's fine too.
Marion, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Is that
Even
something
just
that,
as communication.
is that something that you'd be able to do, or do you want, one of the zoning committee folks there?
Yeah, probably. It's certainly not my area of expertise. So
I think it would be best to have somebody not sitting at the board presenting, just, from appearances.
Yep.
Okay.
Certainly if it was a written statement, it could be given by any of the staff too, if you guys.
Okay. I can do that unless somebody else really wants to.
Depending on the date, I would also attend.
Okay. I think it would be great if this is possible, if we could get bumped up on the agenda too. It seems like the past couple times I've gone to select board meetings and I'm on the agenda, I end up sitting through an hour and a half of meetings.
I'll see what I could do about getting you first dibs.
Only we had an in with the select board.
Yeah. I don't mean to be picky. It's just, it ends up being like a lot of time. When,
I wouldn't go down that path.
Okay.
Well, a lot of times, current events override, administrative stuff. So,
Right.
So would the 14th be our next best chance?
No, we don't. The select board meets on the 7th. If that, or is that what
On Labor
you're
Day?
looking
Yeah, I
at?
don't think so.
No.
Oh, you're right. I forgot. Well, we're
All right.
very, you know,
So we got the 14th.
very dedicated. But you're right, the 14th.
You're cutting out, Marion.
Ooh. So would we actually have a presentation ready for the select board? Or are you just gonna merely bring up the map and speak to it? Am I still?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think we could provide background. Bill was involved, and then you've been involved, so we could just talk about, like Rebecca said, how this started with the master plan, what we've worked on, where we're at, and that we're going to be doing public hearings in October.
Right, right. That's gonna
And
happen
answer
quick.
initial questions from them. Was that your intent, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I'm unavailable on the 14th. So I'm happy to help prepare information.
At the moment, I'm available. I'd be happy to go. I know there's solar discussion on the agenda that night too.
So it looks like the meeting after that is the 28th. I could do that one if we needed me, if we wanted me to be there for it. So
Steve, I could attend with you if you wanted someone else to join you.
I'm happy to go with either date, whichever everyone else thinks is best. I guess it may be Jules to see if you can get us on the agenda.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'd say if we can get room on the agenda for the 14th, I would be available then. Yeah. No school board meeting yet.
Yes. Right. I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
all right. All right, so and then Steve, do you think you'll be able to have your students do a sort of comparison?
Yeah, it'll be a simple table comparison probably, and then we can figure out maybe through the zoning subcommittee how graphically we want to pull it together, or
Okay.
individual sheets maybe is the easiest. So
Yep.
people, you have to look at the information that impacts them. But I'll get on that right away.
Press release. Okay. So what I'm looking at is trying to just get a timeline for this. 15. So 9/14 to select board. So I've got this next Tuesday, I'll get a letter to the editor before, so it goes in the Record Enterprise. On the 15th, we'll get a press release to the Record Enterprise and to the Laconia Daily Sun. I will do both of those. On the 14th, hopefully we'll have Steve and Phil to the select board. It's October 1st is our work session. So we will have a presentation before then. And then maybe that might be something that Steve, Phil, and I, maybe we can just go over that in a meeting the week before, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Does that work?
Yes.
And then we've got Brian, and Brian's looking into just sort of parcel information, or at least how where the line is going to be and how it splits different properties.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I can email that out tomorrow if I get a chance to get to it. But should be.
Okay.
I'll write it down.
All right.
Thank you.
And then next week, the film some sort of interview.
I think it would be good. It could be shorter than the film of our October 1st hearing.
Okay.
It help drum up some interest
Okay.
or put people at ease, or both.
Steve, can you come up with a list of questions that would be good to address if we want to do that kind of format? I think that makes the most sense to have it be sort of a Q&A as opposed to just somebody sitting there rattling off about the zoning stuff.
Yep.
Are you good to do that?
I can do that. I can
And then
you and Phil to just kind of vet them.
okay, sounds good. And then I'm happy to embarrass myself on screen further. So,
I certainly don't
Yeah.
want to leave anybody else out here. Does Carl or Marianne, do either of you have an interest in being part of the process on this?
On the video or just the process itself?
Either, well, you'll be at the selectmen's meeting. I just don't want Carl to feel excluded if he wants to be part of the process.
Absolutely.
I'd like to be part of the process in some way, but my time is like completely tied up at least through the end of September with the census. And at that point, then I'm going to have an awful lot more free time if they shut the census down like they're talking about.
yeah, I think we'll want to revisit in our next work session in early October, the next steps, maybe do a similar type of like, I mean, it might look exactly the same. We'll do more interviews. We'll do another letter to the editor. But I think we'll want to reassess our next approach again. So at that point. Okay.
So I'll work on the questions. I probably won't get to it till Monday, Rebecca. I'll send it to you and kind of vet the questions and just kind of some bullet points from things we've talked about since the
Okay. Yep.
But I think it would be good if there was another planning board member or member of the public that could kind of read through those questions and ask you, so you could then just respond.
Okay.
I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be great.
Before we leave, can somebody please remind me what we amended our bylaws to say regarding a quorum?
3 people.
3 is a quorum? Okay.
I guess it says more than 2.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So in that sense, maybe it's good we don't have 3 planning board members for the interview, so we don't have to notice it and take minutes. Although it will be recorded, so there's there's that. But yeah, making sure that we're careful about that.
But an alternate is not a member, is it?
Alternate is a member. Yep.
Yeah, but
Oh, is it?
alternate may also not vote.
We've sort of been defaulting to not asking our alternate member to step up because he always steps up. So
Not that I'm trying to push you out, Steve. I'm just trying to think, if you're an alternate, are we required to notice it as a meeting? Do we have a quorum if it's 2 members and an alternate?
At the studio?
Yes?
yeah, we've been treating it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe it's better if it's 2 then. Then we'll
Okay.
have it.
So yeah, and as far as the videoing goes, I can give, maybe 2 hours to, I'm tight on time in the next week, but yeah, I will, we'll figure out a time when we can do that next week. So,
Okay, so it's who's doing the video? Rebecca and Steve, or
Brian.
Rebecca and Brian?
Okay, fine.
No,
That would be great.
that's what I
like that.
That's what I heard. I heard Brian offer to ask questions.
okay.
Okay. I'm just going to help with some of the questions and you guys can edit them from there.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh,
Awesome.
I'd love to follow a script.
Oh, good. I'll have fun with that.
Stage direction.
Brian then dances for 5 minutes.
takes the pressure off of me.
Right, anything.
Guitar solo.
All right. So are we good to move forward?
It looks like it. It seems like by having all these different dates too, there's plenty of chance to absorb the feedback and put it in for the next one. You know what I'm saying? So it'll be a constant tweak through all the meetings, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's a good thing to have as a thread, that it's not just us telling folks this is how it is. It's us explaining our reasoning to how we got here, and we're looking for input to shape it further so we can present it to the town at the town meeting.
Perfect. Yep.
Do you actually expect negative feedback from the town? Is that,
Always.
yeah,
I think if we get any feedback, it will be negative. There may be none.
I think zoning is a trigger for a lot of people, just in general. And zoning changes are a trigger for folks. So, yeah, I can't imagine what the town went through to institute the zoning ordinance. So I know that that's a challenge in a lot of towns just to get to the point where there is zoning. So.
And it's confusing, and so it gets people kind of anxious. So I think we're hitting it from every direction to be as transparent as possible still, and welcome those questions and that feedback.
Yep.
And if people don't want it, it won't go forward. So
Right. It's just that simple.
I think a simple way of talking to the citizens, because having attended a lot of meetings for the select board or planning, people meet me at the post office or over the coffee shop and ask them what did they say and what they meant. And I explain the value of what the intent and purpose of what was said. And once you explain it in that manner, that it is a value to the citizens or the property owner, most of the time everybody's, oh, well, okay, I agree, that's a good idea. But a lot of times what is spoken at these meetings is some legalese because of the way the meeting has to occur, or the terminology of the process, and people don't understand all those terminologies. So that's, I think, why this thing of showing different examples of the value of what we're doing, that allows them to see their value in that where they live, that might be helpful.
Yeah, certainly people don't want to lose anything, but they're more than willing to gain something. It's substantial.
Yeah, and I think if we focus on the fact that, you know, the majority of changes we're making are to make, you know, areas less restrictive, and more favorable to business and commercial use, I think the more support we'll get from that.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
I hope we're not scaring Mark away.
I wondered the same. He's still here.
He is still here.
Doesn't realize
You're
it's
muted though, Mark.
Watching what's going
No,
on.
not scared away. Just trying to soak it all in.
All right.
I didn't realize Rebecca had sent me an email earlier with the definition of all the new zones. So that explains my ignorance on that question. So now I can read through this. So
I had to dig to find mine earlier today as well.
it's interesting. I think, again, I'm certainly not everyone in town, but the areas that, to me, that you're looking to designate as gateway and commercial areas, it just seems to be the natural places in town where you would make that decision. So I think most people will see it that way. I could be completely wrong as well on that. So.
Okay. All right. Are we good to, is there any other business?
Are you looking for a motion here?
Well, I just want to know if there's any other business or comments from the public, and then I will, stammer until someone makes a motion.
No business on our end, Madam Chair.
And no public comments.
Okay. So,
I'll make a move to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
all right. And Steve, I realized maybe you were in charge while I was in absence, but I will read the roll since it's my favorite thing. Steve.
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
Carl,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
and I from me.
Were you expecting a no? Sorry.